Hi guys, welcome to my channel. I'm Karen Rice. Today I'm going to show you how I painted this watercolour landscape using this straw. It's a really fun tutorial and I hope you're going to enjoy it. Let's get started. So I'm working light to dark, so the yellow first, and I'm blowing with my straw here, and the paint just goes everywhere. So this is a messy sort of exercise, but so much fun. I'm using the Spritzer bottle just to soften some of those marks there, and this is to kind of represent the sunlight coming through trees. That's what I've got in my mind. You may have something different, so just experiment. It can be quite abstract as well. So I've applied more yellow paint and I'm blowing the paint again. So I'm just applying sort of blobs of paint here, squeezing the brush hairs so big blobs come out. So I've got plenty of paint on the paper, and this is for me to blow with. And again, I'm blowing with the straw, and it's kind of at the bottom of the painting, so it's supposed to be the kind of the foreground. But just to let you into a little secret, I do actually turn the whole thing upside down and work completely different later. So just be very open to what happens, just to see what happens. But this is all the light, and of course the white of the paper represents the light as well. So I'm just applying some of the Quin gold now, blobs of paint, and the raw sienna here. And again blowing the paint or the air through the straw to make the paint move, and it just sort of goes all random, and it's beautiful the way it just all spreads. So I'm using the straw again, and I'm just blowing some of those thin marks there, little sort of puddles of paint, and just getting it moving. I've mixed up a little bit of Winsor Red in with the cadmium yellow light, and I'm just sort of squeezing my brush here, the hairs, letting that orange drizzle onto the damp or wet paper. So I've got plenty of paint at the bottom there. But you could put this sideways on as well, or even at the top. It's up to you. Just experiment and see what happens. And this time, instead of using the straw, I've just decided to tilt. So you can get marks this way as well, quite effectively by tilting. So it's all running in to the yellow, the raw sienna, and the quinacridone gold. I'm using the thin brush now just to sort of use some of that wet paint and create some thin marks. I'm also sprinkling on a little bit of table salt just here and there, and what that will do, it'll absorb the paint to create some amazing light textures. And as you can see, I've allowed my painting to dry naturally, and look at what the salt has done. It's amazing. I'm really pleased with it. You may also notice that I've turned the painting upside down. I've decided it looks like sort of foliage and trees above, and I'm going to keep the foreground quite abstract. So I'm now mixing up some burnt sienna and a little bit of alizarin crimson. So I'm blowing this wet paint, wet on dry, onto the background and just letting it go with the flow. Now there's no control here, not that I know of any. So you've just got to kind of be open to what will happen. The bigger the blob, the wider the mark. If you prefer not to use the straw, you can use a liner brush, a reservoir brush is what I'm doing here, or a rigger. So I'm just using some of the paint there, and I'm just sort of painting away. Or you can use both the straw and the brush. It's entirely up to you. Just have fun and experiment and see what happens. It's just a great way of practicing your watercolors. And I'm just spritzing the marks there at the bottom and tilting just to get it to run down and look more natural. It's semi-abstract this, so you can really sort of have a little bit of fun with this. So I'm just blowing some of those wet marks there, creating lots of thinner little branches there. And to create branches higher up, I'm just putting blobs of paint on to those marks there, using the burnt sienna and the alizarin crimson, and I'm just using my straw to blow those blobs away, so you get lots of sort of thinner, smaller branches at the top. And again, squeezing out the paint here on the left hand side using my size 10 brush, and then again using the straw and then just blowing through and creating all these lovely marks here. So I'm tilting and spritzing here on the left hand side just to make everything look really soft there in the foreground, squeezing that colour there onto the damp paper and tilting. And you can tilt in different directions as well to get the paint flowing where you want it to flow. Adding a little bit more dark there above, wet into wet, so you can sort of paint this with your brush and tilt to allow that to run down there. So I'm just having fun with this and making the sort of foreground sort of a bit more interesting. I love the light that's appearing on the path there. It's quite beautiful. So just using the reservoir brush with that dark colour, the ultramarine burnt sienna, pinch of alizarin crimson, and again tilting and using the straw, allowing it to kind of, the paint just to kind of go into the painting, and this dark colour sort of comes forward as well. So again, quite abstract in that foreground, especially using the reservoir brush just to paint some of those marks there. And you will find details about this brush and all the materials I'm using in the description below. So again, mixing up some more ultramarine here with the burnt sienna, and I'm again sort of painting sort of little puddles of paint on to the sort of tree trunks here and there. And again, use the straw to blow those little puddles there, and they create lots of lovely thin branches. Using a bit of Paynes grey now mixed with the burnt sienna, and just painting damp, or pretty much wet into damp really here, with my reservoir brush. And you can see this dark is coming forward, so I'm turning my painting upside down. I just find it easier to paint the top parts of the trees. So again, just sort of using that Neef brush, which is just like a reservoir brush. And you can find details about this brush in the description. But again, you can use your rigger or a liner brush or just a thin brush where you can create these sort of, you know, thinner branches. And again, take your time. So I'm just adding a few more thin branches here and there. And I've decided to sort of spritz the bottom of these tree trunks on the left just to soften it and push them back. They were sort of standing out and they looked a bit awkward to my eye. And I'm doing the same on the right hand side. I wanted to create more light in the sky here, so I'm just spritzing some of the branches, the tree trunks, but also the yellow underpainting as well. Remember, I'd actually turned this upside down in the second stage. This was actually the foreground before, so I don't have enough light here for my sky. So I'm creating that light. And again, the paint comes off quite nicely because they're not staining colours. So I'm spritzing away here just to get rid of some of this paint. And look, it's created some light there, so I'm quite pleased with that. I've decided to use my sponge to lift off some of the paint here to create more light. The spritzing didn't quite do it. And I'm spritzing here in the foreground to create more light as well, just to soften some of those marks. Otherwise it became so busy and I just want to soften things back now. I'm going to allow my painting to dry naturally. So I'm painting the person with the burnt sienna, and you can use ultramarine or Paynes grey to darken the burnt sienna. Painting wet on dry with a very small size 2 synthetic brush here. And what I usually do to paint people, I've got a little arch window shape here, and then I use 2 long thin triangles for legs, so wider at the top of the leg and literally coming to a point at the bottom, so there's no hands, no feet, no neck, no features, and it's just for little people. And I'll put a link in the description below of a tutorial I published all about painting little people if you want to explore this subject further. So I'm painting a cast shadow as well, wet on dry, beneath the person going towards the left. And I'm painting the little dog now, adding a little bit of dark, damp into damp onto the left side of the dog, and again painting a cast shadow. And what I decided to do was just to lift off a little bit more here and there, so the person's almost lost in the sunlight. I'm trying to really create a lovely atmospheric effect here, so I'm doing the same with the dog and the cast shadow as well with the help of the paper towel. So I'm going to allow the painting to dry once more. I've decided to spatter the painting to create some texture. I've used a little bit of the raw sienna mixed with the quinacridone gold. I'm spattering wet on dry with my size 10 brush, and I'll put a link for my spattering tutorial in the description below. So just spattering here and there to create texture, not too much. It's just a nice way of finishing the painting. So I've removed the washi tape to reveal a lovely white border, and you can see all the wonderful textures and the glowing light coming through those tree trunks and branches there. So I really hope you enjoyed that tutorial and that it inspires you to have a go at doing something similar. If you'd like to support the content that I create here on YouTube, why not think about joining my Patreon membership? You will get access to my weekly exclusive tutorials and downloadable outline sketches, and you can cancel anytime. And details about the membership can be found in the description below. Just click the Patreon link. Thank you so much for watching this tutorial. Happy painting. Bye for now.